SNK vs Capcom Chaos is almost a metaphor for the state of SNK at the turn of the millennium, full of good intentions, but without the time or funding to back it up. As the SNK half of the Capcom SNK deal, SVC Chaos is SNK's take on the crossover game. It is a one-on-one fighting game with a decent selection of characters from both the SNK and Capcom stables. This is actually one of the game's main strengths. The character selection is quite unique and varied. For example, the SNK side gives you characters like the Mars people from Metal Slug and Shiki from Samurai Shodown 64. On Capcom's end, this game gives you characters like Hugo from Street Fighter 3 Second Impact and Tessa from Red Earth. This fan service extends to the fights themselves, where every single matchup has unique dialogue before the fight. These conversations are filled with little references and in-jokes. The game's atmosphere is also quite different to other fighting games from either company. The concept of a chaotic, apocalyptic scenario allowed for music and art design that was quite unsettling. Everything felt just a bit askew, especially the religious overtones constantly present. Players could end up in heaven or hell, and even meet God. It was all quite bizarre and unexpected. Unfortunately, the game itself just feels underbaked. Although it was released in 2003, the game ran on the Neo Geo MVS in the arcade. By this point, the hardware was ancient and simply didn't feature the visual punch of the other boards at the time. The game has a pleasingly retro aesthetic, but it definitely looks like a product of the mid to late 90s, not 2003. It was also cool to see the Capcom character sprites redrawn in the SNK style, but some characters suffered from awkward animation, and the backgrounds were extremely sparse, lacking the animation quality and detail of other games from the era. In fact, the game's overall presentation is bland and basic. For comparison, here's the UI of Capcom vs SNK 2, released almost 2 full years before SVC Chaos. Notice the transitions, the special effects, the music, even the announcer, who admittedly isn't everyone's cup of tea.
This is gonna be a match to remember. Fight!
Adds to the soul of the game. SVC Chaos lacks most of these elements, feeling more like a working build than a finished product. Most importantly, the gameplay was also lacking. It borrowed heavily from the King of Fighters series, particularly 2002. The groove power gauge system allowed for special actions such as super moves, guard cancels, and additional movement options. Guard cancelling is extremely powerful and completely ruins the pace of the fights, as it's almost impossible to safely attack someone once they have enough meter to use it. The whole thing feels quite clunky and lacks the flow of the better fighting games of the era. It definitely feels closer to Street Fighter 2 or Art of Fighting than anything from the new millennium. Again, compare it to Capcom vs SNK 2, where the players can choose multiple team variants with multiple choices of grooves and gameplay systems. That game derived longevity from the choice available to the player, whereas SVC Chaos has gone in completely the opposite direction and stripped the game back to the Stone Age. Despite this basic gameplay, the game is still hideously imbalanced. A handful of characters such as Chun-Li and Iori are simply better than everyone else in the game. This is probably one of the main reasons it never really found much traction in the fighting game community, even with the hardcore crowds. It's a shame because there are some great ideas and nice little touches in the game. It just wasn't enough, particularly when Capcom's effort outshone it in almost every category, despite being released years beforehand. Maybe one day we'll get a sequel with King of Fighters 13 quality presentation and tournament-worthy gameplay. A person can dream.